If you're a tired parent who wishes you could make sense of your baby's sleep so you can support sleep with confidence and without sleep training, then I've got some news to share with you. Enrollment in the Confident and Connected Baby Sleep Program is open. This is an online sleep coaching group specifically for parents like you who want to have holistic strategies to help sleep become easier. In this program, we cover the basics of baby sleep development, attachment-based strategies that don't require separation, how to set up a routine or rhythm to your day and bedtime to make sleep easier. We explore temperament, the sensory system, and health issues that impact sleep. And we talk about how to take care of yourself while you take care of your baby's sleep. In the Confident and Connected Baby Sleep Program, I provide live coaching every week and a community of amazing parents who understand the challenges and rewards of responsive, holistic sleep parenting. This is a 12-plus month program. This means that I'm supporting you through the sleep challenges you're having now, and I get to be your sleep coach in your back pocket for whenever you hit a bump in the road along the way. Now, this last part is important. For the month of September, this program has a discount and has an option to join for just 2 months for a lower enrollment. So if you're ready to stop throwing spaghetti at the wall, trying to make sense of your baby's sleep without sleep training, the next step to do is book a call with me to talk about whether this is the right fit for you. You can book a call at familysleep.ca/contact. And without further ado, let's dive into this episode. This week's topic is inspired by a few of the parents in my group coaching program. They've been reflecting on how glad they are now that sleep is feeling more stable and sleep has improved, that they didn't use separation-based strategies, that they listened to their instincts about responding to their baby. So this is an episode that's more a public service announcement in a way for those parents who are either not aware that there's another alternative other than separation-based strategies, or for parents who know that they want a more responsive, non-cry-it-out approach, but sometimes need a little boost of confidence. So have a listen. Welcome to the Baby Sleep Connection, a podcast that explores baby sleep and more through the lens of attachment and development. I'm your host, Heather Boyd. I'm a mom of 3, an occupational therapist, and a certified infant and family sleep specialist. If you are a tired parent who wants to support your baby's sleep holistically, keep listening as we delve into approaches that go well beyond the usual strategies of wake windows and bedtime routines. Your baby's sleep is connected with so much more. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Baby Sleep Connection. I'm your host, Heather Boyd, occupational therapist and sleep coach and mom of 3. And I have a public service announcement for all you tired parents who are navigating attachment-based parenting. And it is this: you do not need to leave your baby alone in a room crying to teach them to sleep. I'm going to say that again because even if you know that in your heart, repetition is helpful when we're trying to reframe things that we thought were true, and then we discover when we become parents that the rules don't work the way that we thought they did, and the things that we're supposed to do as parents aren't what we thought we were expected to do as well. So you do not need to leave your baby alone in a room to cry in order to fall asleep. Now, I've worked for a very long time supporting tired parents who are wanting to get better sleep and support their baby's sleep development. I've worked even longer as an OT supporting babies and families. And one of the underlying themes that comes in, especially during sleep, is this idea of thinking that we're supposed to do sleep training as a rite of passage. Now, you might be a parent who has never heard of an alternative, that thinks that this is a rite of passage and there are no other options, that this is just something you have to do if you're a responsible parent who loves your baby. More than likely, though, if you're following this podcast, you're a parent who really wants to be a responsive parent, who knows what your values are in terms of responding to your baby and meeting their needs. And yet you still, when the chips are down and your baby is still not sleeping and all your friends' babies are sleeping and your mother-in-law is saying to sleep train, it can be very difficult not to slide right back into that narrative around sleep training. It's what we've grown up with. It's what is modeled around us. Physicians may be telling you to sleep train. And so I'm speaking to both sets of parents today, both the parents that didn't even consider the alternative and those of you who are trying your best, but are still feeling kind of sucked in, that really strong force pulling you into thinking that if things are really bad, the only way to make them better is to sleep train. Now, I'm recalling going to a sleep show, a baby show. It wasn't a sleep show. My part was the sleep part, but it was a baby show, and we were giving free sleep consults to parents, little 15-minute snippets. And if I had $1 for every parent who sat down in that 15-minute consult, and with the first thing that they said is, when do I need to sleep train my baby? I would have walked away with a lot of money, a lot of money that day. It was the single most common question, and it was almost always the first thing out of parents' mouths. When am I supposed to sleep train? They were signing up for the manual, right? Like the manual says we have to sleep train. So just tell me when, and then tell me how. And so it hadn't even crossed their mind that there was something else that they could do. It was almost like parents saying, when do I enroll my kiddo in school? And then being told, well, you could homeschool. You think, oh my goodness, that wasn't even on my radar. I don't understand. And so when we're asked to think outside the box and do something different or reframe what we're thinking, it can be really tricky. And I'm trying video for the first time. And the challenge with video is I do have notes. So I'm looking at my notes as well, because I don't want to edit out things and have the video be choppy. So I want to talk a little bit at this point about why I want to tell a story first about my own experience with sleep training. I was in group A, the set of parents that thought we were supposed to sleep train. And I didn't know any alternatives. And it was a shock to me when I discovered Dr. Sears' baby book. It was all attachment based, and it floored me that there was something different that we could do. But what excited me when I did read it, aside from the cognitive dissonance of having an entirely different framework for parenting in front of me, was to realize that this felt right. It felt like it aligned with who I wanted to be as a parent. It felt like it aligned with all of that I knew from all my professional experience. And this may be ironic, but my entire professional career was working in a program that was run by a woman who was very aware of the attachment resources and the attachment research. She sent us on workshops that aligned with that attachment approach. And yet I had never, ever thought of applying that to sleep. And so when I read this book as a new mom, it just blew me away. And that feeling inside me of, I think this is it. Like, this makes so much sense. I may not know how to do it, and it may take a lot of change in the way I think about things, but this actually feels right. And so I want to delve into a little bit for those of you who are really struggling with the narrative around sleep training and the conflict internally that you might have because of external messages, right? Because we're in a culture that tends to support sleep training. You get the advice from your physician, from your neighbors, from your friends, from many, many people in your circle. I'm always reminded of this when I talk to parents who are looking for a sleep coach or who are getting coached by me. And the reflections that they often have is, I felt like I had to do this. And then I realized that I didn't. But being reminded that this is the right path for me is really helpful. And so why is the non-cry it out approach important? You may already know many of these, but it's such a reminder when we're struggling inside a culture that is saying to do it one way that doesn't align with us. And the first is, when you are responding to your baby's needs at nighttime in the same way that you do in the day, which means you're looking at the need and meeting the need. It's going to look different at night, of course, than during the day, but the need is still there and you're meeting it responsibly. It fills up their attachment cup. It consistently lets your baby know that when they have needs, they will be met by a loving caregiver. It allows your baby to feel right in the world. They're not going to have that tug of feeling concerned or worried or anxious about whether their needs are going to be met. And the irony here is that when we do meet that need, and I talked about this last week in last week's episode, when we do meet the need, it allows our babies to rest in that idea of not having to struggle to have their needs met. So they don't need to signal as much because they know that you're going to be there. They don't need to grab on to your attachment or your presence or your support when they don't need it, because they trust that it's there when they do need it. The second piece about why this is such an important approach is it doesn't deny your instincts as a parent. And I know I'm thinking back when I was taking my newborn baby out for a walk, and it was before I had a carrier and before I knew about, wraps and baby wearing, because I hadn't yet found that book that changed everything for me. And my baby was crying in the stroller, and my heart was just, I talk with clients about that heartstring, this string that attaches your heart to your baby's, figuratively speaking. And you can almost physically feel it tugging when your baby is away from you. And whether they're 1 month old or 25 years old and traveling around the world, that heartstring gets pulled when we have separation. And it feels like such a relief when we can come together, when we can reunite, when we can be connected. And I remember feeling that heartstring as my baby was crying in the stroller. And I thought, oh, well, this is what I need to get used to. This is the feeling of being a parent. And I think back now to that young mother that I was. I think I just want to wrap her in a hug and say, no, it's okay to pick up your baby. This is not a rite of passage. You can comfort your baby. And your baby is signaling and crying to you because they need something from you. They may be afraid or cold or lonely, and meeting the need is never a bad thing. The third piece is that, and this applies to so many of the clients that I work with, when you have a highly sensitive baby, they're going to be more impacted by the separation than a very laid back baby. So in particular, they need to have that closeness and connection and reassurance to not need to fight that separation and to cling to you. I know a lot of stories from parents who return to work and they comment about how much more clingy their baby is during that adaptation period of getting used to return to work and daycare. Their baby is trying to relieve the pressure of having that heartstring pulled so tight during the day. Now, this is not saying anything about whether daycare is right or wrong or good for your family. It's just saying that when your baby is reunited with you, they're going to want to fill up that cup more. And highly sensitive babies will have that really high sense of needing to reconnect for that reassurance. And so for many, many of you who are listening, you can relate to a high needs baby who just needs a little or a lot more than most babies, that reassurance, that connection, that consistency of response from you. The fourth reason that I think that the non-cry it out approach is so important is that it aligns with everything that we know about attachment theory, the research that we have. It doesn't matter who you pick up to read, whether it's Yuri Bronfenbrenner or John Bowlby or Mary Ainsworth or Gordon Neufeld. The idea of how much we actually know about attachment makes it such a clear win to respond to our babies. Now, I'll add one little caveat, and that is that responding is going to look different for your family than for another, and for one baby over another. Responding lovingly to meet the need is going to look different because your baby's needs are going to be different from other babies. And I'll bring up this example because I think one of the challenges for attachment-based parents is this sense of needing to earn a badge to be attachment-based enough. Like, are you ticking all the boxes? Are you doing it right? If I do this, does that count as sleep training? And if I do that, does it mean I'm good enough as a parent? And I want to wipe that slate clean and let you know that this is about figuring out who your baby is and what they need, and then figuring out how do you meet that need in a way that you can manage, pulling in the resources that you may have or the support that you have, and creating something that's unique for your family. And I'll give the example of my second born, who was a very laid back baby who really had a great relationship with sleep. He slept quite a lot and easily. And when he woke up, he didn't cry. And I still remember that first time he woke up and was just looking around. And I had no experience with that because our firstborn, when he woke up, he went from 0 to 60 and needed me to pick him up and comfort him. But my second born would just look around. And I would realize he was awake and think, well, what do I do? If he were crying, I'd know what to do, but he's just kind of chill. And so I had to figure out a new way of meeting his needs for chill time. He was a slow to wake up kiddo, so he wasn't going to bounce right out of into wakefulness. He needed some time to wake up. And if I was nearby and just bustling around wherever he was sleeping, he was content and fine. I didn't need to do anything in particular until he was fully awake and ready to get going. But another example related to that is he was also a kiddo that needed things to be pretty quiet to fall asleep, because once he was awake, he just wanted into everything and wanted to chat, wanted to move, wanted to play. And what I was finding was I would bring him to his crib and do all the things that had worked with my firstborn, the rocking, the shushing, the nursing. I knew he was tired, but he wasn't falling asleep. And so I finally resorted to putting him in the crib, which was not something we'd ever used with our first because it was such a terrible thing for him. It was not a good fit. So I put him in the crib and he's still babbling away. And I thought, I'm just going to step out for a minute. I'm going to be back. And I stepped out and closed the door and I thought, oh my gosh, if the attachment parenting police were a thing, they'd be knocking on my door saying, you just left your baby awake in their room. But this was a kiddo who would not cry, but I'll say warble or grumble because he wanted to continue the conversation. And he'd warble and grumble for maybe a minute before he'd sit down, lie down, and fall asleep. And I kept thinking, is this crying it out? Because he's kind of letting me know, he's protesting, he's letting me know he's not happy. He didn't sign up for me leaving. He wants to keep playing. And yet, if he fell asleep this way, he would sleep for an hour, hour and a half or two. And I know so many of you don't have babies that do this, but I want to highlight this because this is about adapting to the needs of your baby. And I was so worried about whether this counted. Like, could I even talk about this idea that I was walking out of the room and shutting the door, which at the beginning of this podcast, I said, you do not need to leave your baby crying alone in a room to teach them to sleep. And I kind of felt like, am I doing that? And I had to reframe, what are my baby's needs and how am I meeting them? He is complaining, kind of grumbling, and then falling asleep for an hour and a half or two. And if I stayed with him in the same way that I stayed with my firstborn, he would not sleep at all. He'd miss an entire nap or an entire day of napping. And so I really had to, again, shift from this attachment mindset of what it was supposed to look like to something that was actually going to work for him. And I share that because every kiddo is different and their needs are different. And if you can take away all the noise from any sleep trainer, from any sleep coach, even from me, and just look at your baby to figure out what is it that they need and how can I best meet that need. And if that's resonating with you, listen to last week's episode because I talk about that quite a bit. So why I want to share 3 points on why an attachment-based responsive approach is not a cure-all. Because sometimes I think when I see questions on message boards, there's a sense that, oh, just bed share, it makes everything easier. Oh, just nurse to sleep, it makes everything easier. And certainly it eliminates a lot of the resistance. That resistance around what we think we should or shouldn't do, and around the resistance of bad habits, and the resistance around whether we should sleep train or not. And so I want to really highlight that it doesn't fix sleep. It can make it easier in a lot of ways. It can make it a lot easier to lean into the need. But here are 3 reasons why it's not a cure-all. And I think this may be reassuring for those of you who are doing a more responsive approach to sleep parenting and aren't seeing the fireworks go off of good sleep. And you're saying, well, maybe this isn't the way. So the first is that sleep development is still hard. It's a long, slow process. I like to broaden parents' perspective from, a 1-month period and getting through a sleep regression versus a 3-year period of growth and development to get towards something that looks anywhere close to adult sleep. So it is still very hard. Responding to your baby eases their anxiety and worry and meets their need. It can make sleep come more easily, but it doesn't mean it's easy. So don't think that because it's not easy, it's not the right path. Again, look at your baby's need and look at the way you can meet that need and what feels right to you. The second piece is this kind of approach to sleep does take more of your attention because you're not following a script from a book that says follow these steps to sleep train your baby in 3 nights. Although I'm not big on censoring books, but I would be tempted to burn those books that suggest that they can teach your baby to sleep in 3 days. Forgive me for that. But I think when you're moving away from this step-by-step approach that doesn't consider your unique baby, you're having to figure out a little bit more by paying attention to your baby in a way that the sleep trainers don't expect. The sleep trainers may have a cookie cutter approach that says every baby follows these steps, you follow these steps, and they'll sleep better at the end. When you're taking a more responsive approach, you're getting to know your baby. You're looking at their temperament. And anyone who's listening who's a client will recognize that we talk a lot about temperament and we talk about sensory processing and the sensory system and what it is your baby needs in their environment to optimize sleep, to make sleep as easy as possible at this stage in development with this personality and this temperament and under these conditions. So the third piece is that it does take resolve and it takes a commitment to this approach. I almost feel like it is kind of taking a rage against the machine kind of mindset that despite the narrative around crying it out and around separation-based sleep strategies that involve crying and not responding. I mean, your baby will cry from time to time. It's their way of communicating. But when they are crying because their needs aren't met, it does take some resolve to say that this idea of training them to sleep better through separation is not the way that you're going to move in a different direction, a little bit against the current of what's happening culturally. And every time I kind of get settled into this idea that, well, everyone knows that this is, the attachment-based approach is so helpful for so many reasons, I'll get a new client that will remind me that the environment that is surrounding many parents is not very supportive in terms of the attachment-based piece, especially if parents are tired and they're not sleep training, their tiredness will be blamed on their lack of sleep training. And I think that is just so unfair, knowing that those first 3 years are going to be hard anyway, and that if they are hard in a way that still aligns with your parenting beliefs and your values around responsive parenting, that's going to feel like way less of an energy drain than if you are trying to get your baby to sleep by leaving them alone and they're crying and upset and you're certainly not feeling great either. I think any advice that involves parents putting on noise canceling headphones and drinking wine is not a supportive approach for parents, regardless of where they are on that spectrum of cry it out versus go entirely with the flow of emerging development. So I want to give you a little bit of a sense of what to do next if this is feeling like, okay, this is great, I want more. There are 2 things that I'm going to suggest you do. The first is I want you to get a sticky note from your junk drawer or your pile of notepads, and I want you to write something down from this episode that sticks out as a positive reminder to you that you are on the right path. And it could be, I do not need to leave my baby alone in a room to cry. It could be as simple as that. And I want you to write it down. And I want you to put it on the bathroom mirror that you use the most often. And I want you to make another one. It can be the same words or something different. And I want you to put it in your wallet, somewhere where it sticks out a little bit and you'll see it. Because when we are trying to either reframe our entire approach to parenting, or we are trying to remind ourselves that, no, we've chosen this path for a reason, it's good to get reminders of it. And those reminders can come from your bathroom mirror or from your wallet. Put them in places that you're going to be reminded, and it will support this whole shift that you're making and all the layers that you go through to incorporate this as part of who you are as a parent. But the other thing is that I encourage you to sign up to get a PDF that I've developed. I developed it for a free workshop I gave months ago. And I would like to share it here now. It is a resource. It's a 7-page resource called How to Not Sleep Train, a responsive parent's guide to supporting your baby's sleep. I will leave the link in the show notes, but you can also go to familysleep.ca/links. I will add it in there so you can look for a resource that says How to Not Sleep Train. And I encourage you to download that, take a peek at it as reassurance that you are on the right path as a responsive parent, and that crying it out or leaving your baby to cry and figure it out on their own is not aligned with the way that you're approaching parenting. And it's certainly not aligned with the research that we have. So I hope you found this helpful. I look forward to seeing you access that PDF. If you have any questions about this podcast, or you think that I've left anything out of this conversation, I would love to hear from you. And until next time, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I do hope that you found the information and perspectives in this podcast episode helpful to you as you navigate your baby's sleep development. Of course, this podcast provides general information, and it isn't tailored to your family's reality or the specific needs of your baby. If you're concerned about your baby's sleep or health, be sure to reach out to your healthcare provider. If you're feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and you need a place to feel nurtured and reassured, you can find me on Instagram at familysleep.ca. Until next episode, look for the connections that support you and your baby.